Hello, everybody. Let's see if anyone is here. Okay, I can see some folks. Can anyone hear me? I'm doing this solo for the first time, and it's a little terrifying. So if you can hear me, put something in the chat. Ah, Desiree, you've just made my morning. Great. Okay, well, we're probably gonna, I'm gonna wait a minute here, so pad a little bit for about a minute, and then we'll get started on this. I want to make sure everyone sort of gets in here. So maybe everyone can put in the chat, post where you are coming from, and maybe, I don't know, fun fact, maybe not a fun fact, maybe what you're using to go and access MCPs, or if you're using MCPs, maybe something like that. You can just start with telling me where you're from. Sun of Seattle, awesome. Great time to be in Seattle. Miss your city. We had our last, 2 years ago, the offsite there. It was so good. Nashville, Costa Mesa, yeah, great. Oh, Santa Cruz, just down the road. I'm in Oakland. Portland. Yeah, great. Upstate New York, beautiful. Ryan, you're in Oakland as well? That's awesome. Shane, good to see you. Awesome. Great. All right. Well, I think we've probably given enough time now. So I'm gonna run into it. Look, normally I have someone that's helping me do this, but today I'm doing this solo. So bear with me. There's obviously chat. There's also Q&A. So if you have questions, you can send them into the Q&A, and we'll get there. If you put them in the chat, that's fine too. But the Q&A just helps me organize it just slightly easier. I am going to share my screen in a second, and we will start running through. Playing with Claude and some Figma MCP stuff. Yeah, Figma's Make in particular is really awesome, and I'll touch on that a little bit today, actually. So let me share my screen. So today, let me share my screen and then I can start. Great. So for those that don't know, my name is Ned. I am the co-founder and CEO of Great Question. I come from a products background. I am super into everything Claude and AI, MCP. And so I just spend a ton of time in and around these tools, but I'm not an expert. To be honest, I don't know if anyone is really an expert on this stuff because it's all so new and it's changing so much. So you're going to learn as much as I will from some of this stuff today. We're even going to do a live demo, which is, wish me luck, doing that live in Claude, but I've got to practice backup in case we need to go and switch to it. We can do that. But I really encourage everyone to be asking questions, because if you've got a question, someone else is probably thinking the same thing too. There are no dumb questions, and we can kind of rip into it. For those that don't know about Great Question, just briefly, we are an end-to-end UX research tool built to help enterprise organizations from Intuit and ServiceNow to fast-growth companies like Canva and Brex to better understand their customers through our research CRM, through all of our mixed methods, or through our repository. And it's supercharged with MCP, because now you can do anything, basically anything that you can do inside the product, you can do from within Claude. Which is really cool. The reason you're able to do all that stuff via Claude is this new protocol called MCP. It's the Model Context Protocol. And it basically lets you connect Great Question to Claude to ask it queries. And it's a little bit more powerful than an API because it can have all these different tool calls where it can do things for you within Great Question and then bring the answers back, like summarize an interview or a study or everything you know about a topic. And prevents you having to click through UI and allows you to do some cool mashups, which I'll talk a little bit about today. We now have over 112 different tool calls available. In fact, I think I've actually got a little example of it. Here are some of these many tool calls. So when I talk about 112 ways to run UX research from Claude, I'm really talking about all these little endpoints that allow you to do everything from, create and update candidate profiles to, search to find the right people you might want to run research with, find segments, then set up a study and set up a list that you might want to run the research with. Read your calendar to see what availability you've got, all the way through to synthesizing and sharing what you're learning with your team, from all without leaving Claude. And MCP works across any of the providers. So if you're not using Claude, you could be using Copilot, you could be using ChatGPT. Because of this protocol, which is open source, you can use it anywhere that you want to be using, which is great, because everything is changing so much that you want the flexibility to try the latest and greatest. And so we're going to show you today more about what this looks like in practice. So I'm going to talk about the challenge I think that MCP helps unlock around the setup tax. I'll talk about that capability map a little bit more. I'm going to do this live demo, so we're going to spend a good chunk of time. And then the what's new in Q&A. And I would love everyone, not just welcome questions that you might have to ask here, but also, even if you've here's how I use it, like practical examples of people that have used MCP. Doesn't need to be ours, could be someone else's, could be something completely unrelated to research. But if you've got those stories, then people love hearing that stuff. Yeah, I got a question from Alina Black already, which I think I kind of covered, which is curious if MCP can run through Cursor. In our org, we don't have direct access to Claude, but we do via Cursor. And the answer is yes. So anywhere MCP is available, use Cursor. I use a tool called Conductor. I use a little bit of Cursor as well, but I always use Conductor, which makes it easy to run multiple projects with multiple threads for each project concurrently. And so, yeah, anywhere you can use MCP, you can use the Great Question one. Great. And so, a little bit about me. I think you've heard enough. I'll keep going on that front. So, before we get to the interesting part of research, you've got to do a lot of setup, right? You've got to go and create the study or design it. Really, you got to configure a screener. You got to set up incentives. Then you get into shortlisting participants and sending invites and scheduling sessions. And then when you actually run the session themselves, afterwards you've got to go and pull all the transcripts, and maybe you're tagging it manually or via a tool, and then you're exporting the findings and maybe into some sort of format that people can read. It's a lot of stuff. And I think these things are equally weighted on this screen, but we all know how much time goes into the design of the study. And we also know how much time goes into the execution. And it's a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily, not all equally makes the output or the quality of the research better. And some of it is also very repetitive. And so what if we could take these things and condense them down into a prompt or a series of prompts or a skill, so that the things you're doing all the time in a very similar way could be executed for you from within your environment, from within Claude or Cursor or Copilot. And so that's basically what Great Question MCP allows you to do. As I mentioned, it's the model context protocol. It's a standard that's been produced. I think Anthropic actually originally designed it to allow you to go and connect these tools. And it's more powerful than an API because it includes some of the auth, so you can access it easily from an auth perspective. And then it has these little tool calls that you can go and design. And so I gave examples of a tool call like, go and create a list, or go and search and summarize across all your interviews to go and tell me what's trending in the last month in our research repository. It's super awesome. I'd love to get a show of hands who is using it right now, maybe what you're using it for in the chat. If you've got a specific example of what you've used it for, we'd love to see that. I'm sure other folks would too. And so, yes, you can access it in Claude, you can access it in Cursor, and really it's any MCP client. So as new ones get added, then it will come available there as well. John Jessup, hello, Berkeley, right next door. I'm in Rockridge, just down the street. And so we have all these different tool calls that we've gone and built. In fact, this has been like a super hot area for our product. We first built the MCP in Great Question in October. We released it to our first customers in February. And it's every week we're adding some new tool call to it. And so anything that's here that's currently read, it's not right yet, will be right in the next few weeks. And if you have requests for specific things that you would love to see in here, we'd love to hear that, because the uptake on it has been crazy, as has like the velocity of the team executing against this. It's been super awesome. Whether it's managing your candidates, designing the study, scheduling, recruiting, actually analyzing the data and synthesizing it to distribute it to the rest of your team. And so we did a survey about a month ago on how teams are actually looking to adopt MCPs to like really understand like how it's fitting into their research workflows. And most folks, it's really about, number one is most people want to be able to reference and use their repository instead of having it sit there and gather dust. For me, this is like where I started. I'm very often, I now have a customer signal skill in my Claude. That signal skill pulls from our repository, our mix panel, which is our analytics tool, Pylon, which is our support tool, Fathom, which is our sales and success call recording tool. And I can ask it a question like, tell me about how everyone's been using our highlight reels feature. And it will go through and give me the sentiment over time and who's using it, who are the power users, what past research we've got in our repository. It's really amazing. I think the results of this are a little bit biased in some ways, because most of them you can see they're mostly around the repository side of things, right? It's connected research. It's all around the repository and synthesis stuff. It's less on generating new studies and things like this, which I think is kind of new. The idea that you could actually go and set up a study plan and execute it from within Claude. In terms of the different tools that people are using to go and access it, number one is Claude. So we talk about that a lot. I think Claude became very powerful about 6 months ago, and so there's so much adoption on it. We use it a lot internally, but let's not ignore the fact that you can go and access it from other tools. We're just seeing it less and less common, although I imagine that could change over time. These things are moving so fast. We also learned that there's a bunch of combinations. So there are people that are using Claude only. Some people are using different tools for different reasons. Personally, I use Claude for most of my work, either Claude Code or Claude Traditional. They're basically the same thing. But I will then use Codex for two specific use cases. I use Codex to review the work that I did in Claude. I'll say, hey, Claude, can you give me this in a format I can go and give it to Codex to double check your work? And it's like, no worries. And it bundles it up for me. And then I say to Codex, hey, can you check this work and let me know, what am I missing? What else should I be thinking about? What questions should I answer to do a better job of this project, whatever it is? And it always comes back with something very insightful and interesting around that work. Whether I'm like shipping a feature and it suggests some additional test coverage I might write, or a bunch of different things. So that's great. The second use case I've got is anytime I want to generate images. So if I want to go and produce a photograph or an image or something to go and illustrate something, I find it's really, really good for that use case, and Claude is just kind of fine for it. So your mileage may vary. And so looking at the chat, Heather Court's on the list for access to MCP for GQ. I will keep an eye out. I think Jack might be on the call today, who is the PM on MCP. So you can take a look and see if we can get you off. Desiree is using MCPs to collect information across multiple channels to get a holistic view of customer sentiment and the opportunities to improve the product. Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing something similar, kind of voice of the customer type stuff. And Anushka using MCPs to create a participant recruitment bot, pulling data from CRM Databricks and identifying the appropriate users for a given study. Awesome. I do the exact same thing. I'm like, okay, now that I've gotten this understanding of the highlight reels functionality, I might use that to go and write a product requirements doc for how we can go and accelerate the highlight reels product. I might go and produce some mocks maybe. Now, but I still have open questions. I'm like, well, how much do people want to manually go and generate this versus, there's a ton of different questions I could ask. Well, now I can say to Claude, you found me this voice of the customer from these different channels via my customer signal tool. Find me these specific people that have used the product in the last month or are significant detractors or significant promoters, put them in a list so I can run research with them. And it will go and find those email addresses, find those individuals, and append it into the profile. Oh, Kyle, how you doing? I did see your email. I haven't read it yet, but not using the Great Question MCP yet, but we are building our own to pull info from our research repo. Yep, smart. Read, no writing as of today. Awesome, cool. That is great. So some other ways our customers are using this. They're using it to create a living insights ecosystem and AI librarian to help organize and structure things within their repository. Chaining together other tools, other MCPs, Figma, Coda, and Miro. Fun fact, you can now access the Great Question MCP inside of Figma Make. And so you can be in Figma Make designing something, and you might be like, okay, now I want to test this prototype. At Great Question, go and set up a study for me to test this prototype. And it can go and find the list and set up the right method and write the screener questions, write the evaluation questions. You could consider it a draft, and you can guide it as well. And then you can go and get the feedback and then bring that back into, without ever leaving Figma Make, we'll give you a link. You can then say, cool, now update the prototype based on this feedback. And it will go and analyze the feedback and say, these are the top 3 things we think you might want to bring in. If you're okay with that, it goes and updates the prototype. And then you could run another round. So that's super cool. Generate reports and personas and PIDs. I do this a lot. Schedule automated research briefs. So things like, all right, it's the first of the month. What did we learn last month across our research repository? Create a summary I can go and share in Slack or some other channel. Pulling insights and transcripts. Yep, super common. And then creating synthetic uses from repository data. I feel like synthetic uses is the third rail of research right now. We haven't yet formed our opinion on it, except to say that I think it can be very useful for blowing smoke through projects before you launch them to make sure that everything makes sense and works properly. But we do have some customers that are leveraging our repository and MCP to build them. So, yeah. John Jessup, using an MCP query our repos that PMs can self-serve the lit review section or gap analysis in the PDFs. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. That makes a ton of sense. Cool. So enough gabbing. Let's go and see this in practice. And I will change my screen share to my Claude. This is just regular Claude chat. It's not Cowork or Claude Code. You can go and access it via those different modes, but there's some slight nuance that makes chat a little bit better, which I'm not going to go too much into. But what we're going to do is we're going to set up a research study. And I'm cheating here a little bit because I created this prompt earlier so that I could make sure it works. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, set up a new round of customer interviews for Expenser, which is our demo account. Create a 30-minute moderated interview called Expense Approval Flow Customer Interviews with a $75 incentive and this research goal. Understand how finance admins use the redesigned expense approval flow where it slows them down. Open my calendar for bookings next week, weekday mornings, 9 to 12 with a 15-minute buffer and no more than 3 a day. So I think this is a cool start. I can probably add a couple more things here. I might say, this might be 1, right? That's what I'll do here. And then I might come in here and I might say 2. I'm really nervous about the submitting, so I'm not hitting tab here. 2, draft the emails. And then 3, shortlist number of candidates from my eligible Great Question segment. And then 4, provide the link to a study so I can review it. Pretty standard sort of prompt. The cool thing is if you've like already gone and created this in like a Google Doc where you've been collaborating with your stakeholders on designing the study, you could also just upload it. You could just say, hey, here's the plan I've got. Can you just go and settle this up for me? And it will do it from that. It's going to save you that time of like manually entering things into Great Question or whatever tool you're using. All right. So this is the part where everyone needs to cross their fingers. Can you explain a bit more about scheduled automated research briefs? So the idea here, Kyle, is that you could, I don't know if that language isn't quite right. It's probably not the language I would use here, or my understanding about what that is about. The idea is that you could set up a routine in Claude or somewhere like that to every Monday or the first of the month or whatever that period is, go back and analyze everything that we've been learning in our research repository and produce some sort of report to say, this is what we learned in the last month or what the research team is doing. That could be just to look at what the research team is doing, these specific users, and tell me what studies they've launched and how many participants they've spoken to and how much incentive dollars they've spent, any of those sort of questions that you might want to answer and share in that kind of report. Or it could be mining the repository and saying, here's what do we learn in the repository, maybe only on what the research team has produced versus other teams have produced. You could even do something from an ops perspective, talking about like usage or consumption stats, pulling from your repository reporting or your research tool reporting tool. There's a bunch of things you could do there. I hope that's helpful. And I can see a reply. Interesting. Okay, great. Cool. Bigger conversation at some point. Cool. So, all right. It's thanks for sandbagging for me, Kyle. So, orchestrated multi-step study setup workflow with tool sequencing. So you can see, I can go and see what it's done, right? I'm breaking down what Ned said. Let me figure out which Great Question tools are available. I know Ned's been working with Great Question. Also notice the request looks like it came through voice dictation. This looks fine, cool. So it's telling me what it's done. Then it's mobilized the study creation framework for interview setup. It's got some tools to initialize and figure that out. And then it's deliberated between tool connectors for moderated interview scheduling, right? Ask for a 30-minute moderated interview. And so this is more technical what's going on our end. There's a live moderated interview study with scheduling. It's orchestrated the interview study setup. It's created as a draft. One thing to fix, maximum notice days came back as 0. Calendar set, now let me find the eligible Great Questioners segment to shortlist the candidates. It's found it, thank God, and now it's weighing whether to build sourcing list before continuing. It's just going through, it's just talking to itself basically as it tries to figure out what's going on. You go and listen to its ramblings. Sometimes it's helpful if you're like, why did it do that? I don't often read this stuff these days. I'm mostly doing it because I'm padding for time. Once a product is created, can a screener be added to it through Claude? Yes. In fact, that's actually the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to type. It will create a screener for me. It didn't need to, but it will. And we can go and edit it up. So I'll show you how that works. Cool. So everything's set up as a draft, ready for review. Study created, customer interviews. So I can click on that, which I will in a second. 30 minutes Zoom. It's got an incentive amount. You could you can go and set this parameter either via skill in Claude, which is fine, but I find sometimes Claude ignores skills. You can also, soon you'll be able to do this within Great Question. We're calling them playbooks, so that you can define, this incentive for this type, for this much time. You can define all those governance type principles, and we'll enforce it. And that's important because the research ultimately is going to get distributed out of Great Question, so we can make sure that nothing happens without meeting your playbook governance, whereas Claude can allow you to go and get around that stuff. It's got a research goal, understand how finance admins use the redesigned expense approval flow. It's going to set up my booking calendar. I'll need to just double check my calendar and Zoom are connected, which I believe they are. and then it's gone and drafted the emails for me, even a reminder email. I could go and say, hey, I could go and run an anti-AI slop thing to get rid of M dashes if I wanted to. I could again feed it how I like to write emails. It's then gone and shortlisted me some candidates, some that's a top pick, someone that has no phone, yellow and red health, maybe lower priority. Two things worth flagging. So it looks like mostly internal. This is true because I'm doing a demo here. So meant to be a fit. And how many do you want to invite? And do you want to use the segment as is? Use segment as is and invite 5 of them when we're ready, which we're not yet. And then I'm going to add this question to Olivia to ask your question. I'm going to give it these 2 additional things here. Now, tighten the screener on that study before we invite anyone. Adding a screener question. In fact, let me just go and ask it versus showing you the interface. Tell me what the screener questions are. That's such a funny thing to be demoing this. I appreciate everyone's patience because I'm demoing. It's like, am I demoing Great Question or Claude? Like, how much is Claude doing this versus us? And it can take a little bit of time as well. There's this new quick answer button, but I'm worried that if I press that up, it's going to be a fast answer, not a correct answer. But does it have a screener? Okay. I was going to offer to add one. Okay, well, let me, I've got this pre-built prompt. Tighten the screen on that study before you invite anyone. Add a screening question. How often do you approve expenses with these options? Also add question, which one do we want? One from above, because that's got a disqualification question in there as well. And then add a second require question asking, call it a third, what expense plan they're on, then bump the incentive to $100 and cap the participants at 12. So we're able to go and edit this thing, even though we've got a draft, we can go and do it all via chat instead of going and manually pressing buttons to go and edit it. Yeah, I'm feeling lucky. I'm not feeling lucky, not a live demo, thank you very much. So it's going to go through and do that. And I'm going to open up the study in the meantime while it clicks away. Where was that link? Here it is. This is the moment of truth. Oh my gosh, you guys, you'll never believe it. Is that sharing? Here it is. It's got a study title. It's got a research goal, number of participants. It's got incentives toggled on. It doesn't yet have the screener that will update shortly. It's got the calendar. I need to add some available times to that because it hasn't brought in my available slots because my calendar is a bit of a mess. But I can do that. I can review it and then publish it. And this is important because if I go to our website, which I can't easily do because I'm logged in, but there's a page on our website, which I'll send you the link afterwards, which shows when we have human in the loop and when we don't. Because it is still important in this process to still have a human in the loop when you're going to be doing things like spending money. You can accidentally go and launch a study and pay 1,000 people to go and participate, and maybe they can't view the image you're trying to do, or they're the wrong segment, or you spam the wrong users. Those moments are critical to go and have an individual actually in the loop to go and say yes. Now, we are building we have approval flows already, but building a more robust approval flow mechanism, which allow you to then set rules. So you can say things like, look, if it's less than this much incentive or no incentive, and the sample size is this size, and maybe it's a researcher that's doing it, and some other parameters to give you comfort, then you won't need that human in the loop, but that is coming because governance is really important to us, and we don't want people blowing their feet off. And being able to pay people would be a very easy way to do that. Okay, quick questions on the chat before I show you this. If a new screener is drafted here with the MCP, can we access that screener again in future projects as a template? You can. You would just tell it to save that as a template. In Great Question, I'm not sure if we allow screeners templates to be updated, but I will take that as a feature request. That's pretty easy. We have templates already in screeners, but I'm not sure if we write them yet. Let me come back to you on that. Kyle, curious about the recommendation human loop approval flow. Would that happen in Claude, or is the current recommendation to go to the GQ service direction to approve? Today, it's to go to the GQ surface area, but if we're lucky, I will show you all something very fancy that is coming next, which will basically render the Great Question product surface area inside of Claude, so that you can do things like you can review the email, you can review the entire look and feel of the study, you can look at the approval flow form. Soon you'll be able to look at admin parts of it without having to leave Great Question, which I think gives a bit more control than just saying approve, thumbs up, in that human loop thing, because that when you have there's a setting in Claude, definitely maybe not in Claude Code, there's a setting in Claude Code which is like bypass permissions, which is awesome, but it will not ask you a single question. It will just keep charging through, and it does amazing stuff. But that's the kind of thing that's going to get you in trouble with that human in the loop, because it'll just say approved versus actually rendering the interface and you having to go and interact with it will be that catch, that safety catch. Bigger conversation, Carl. Cool. So orchestrating atomic screener creation. Study has no screener yet. Screener's in. Send a bump and participant cap. Done. All these changes are done. It's got these 3 things. 2 things to note. On Q3, I made it a free text field because I don't know expenses actual plan names. It's fine, and they're made up. And I didn't want to invent tiers people might recognize. Look, it's doing something responsible. If you give me the plan list, I'll update it. And to confirm what I've not done, the segment as is, invite 5 plan is noted for later, no list built, nothing attached, no notation set. So now I could go and move to that stage of like setting it up to invite and then the human in the loop thing. But I'm going to call it there while I'm ahead and instead now go to do some analysis stuff. And this is the last piece of the demo. So open a past survey that we did and pull in all the responses. Write me a stakeholder ready report, headline findings, the clearest patterns and where responses differ. 3 or 4 representative quotes in people's own words, and 3 recommendations. Keep it tight enough to drop into a slide, then turn it into a visual report, a single self-contained HTML page so we can share it, and publish as an artifact I can screenshot into a deck. Just realizing that it's mostly in the chat. It's in the last 2 chats. It's John Jessup in Berkeley and Carl, who I think is also in East Bay somewhere. Go East Bay, represent. We should have done this. We could have done this in person. Cool. And so you can see this. It's triggering Great Question. It's found it. And it's going to pull them all in. Often it will, when you're first setting this up, it'll say, do you want to approve a bunch of these things? Like it'd be asking me constantly, do you want to approve? Do you want to sometimes approve? Always approve. You get to go and set those settings within Claude about which things you want to have manually reviewed, always reviewed, or not. I've gone and marked everything as always approve for Great Question at this point. Just the way that I'm using it mostly, it makes it easier and faster. But it's up to you. Your mileage may vary. Great. So it's got all these survey responses. Pulling them in, moving on to Q2. Looking at how teams are evaluating their AI learning effectiveness. Starting to come up with some ideas about what it's learning. And now it's got to figure out how to like condense this into something. I've asked it to design an HTML page, like an asset I can share It's a little bit extra, but I think it's kind of cool and can make it easy to consume. Talking to a lot of researchers, I think one of the things I've learned is that different stakeholders have different ways that they want to go and consume this information that you're producing. Some of them are like, just give me access to it. Let me go and talk to Claude to go and understand what's going on, or like dig deeper once you've done the share out. Others are like, I want to see all the numbers and the data. Others are like, I would need this in a visual format. Others are like, just give me, is there a highlight reel or present? Is there a deck I can go through? Like everyone has their own preferences. And so you can go and leverage Claude to go and help you do that customization. Okay. This is going to take a minute. Any other questions? Let me check the Q&A. Would it be possible to insert a photo and the sender's signature into the emails? Will be functionality to hide the bottom footer from GQ with the unsubscribe option, since clients sometimes perceive such emails as spam. Two things here, Olivia. We don't currently have the ability to insert a photo and the sender's signature. You can just have could you do a signature? You kind of could, but it's basically rich. It's rich text, so it's kind of light HTML versus like a fully formatted, beautiful little thing. It doesn't have that little functionality yet. I can see it coming, but not yet. We don't have the ability to hide the bottom footer from GQ because we want to make sure that people can unsubscribe or get a cooldown period if they're like, you're sending me too many invites to research. One thing we can to help prevent people feeling like it's spam is we can host it on your domain. So you can have like, research.company.com. And you can also have custom branding. There's like a bunch of things like that we do to make it feel less like it's spam or phishing. Alina Black, curious MCP. Oh, wait, we've already answered that one. Great. Addison. Does the GQ MCP play well with your own custom instructions for Claude? It does. When you say custom instructions, do you mean skills, or do you mean tool-based instructions? Any clarity on that? Skills, it does generally play well, but sometimes I find Claude will ignore skills and instructions. But yeah, that's probably a bit more granular question. Cool. So it's gone and created a readout. It's giving me, starting with like how big is the sample size, when it was done, what the study name was. Teams are confident, self-taught, but stuck on one wall, turning impressive AI demos into governed, trustworthy workflows. 4 out of 5 from every single respondent, 70% self-rate as advanced, yet nearly every open text answer says the blocker isn't skill or awareness, it's trust. So it's got some answers here. These are all made up, so we don't need to read too much into them. But it's now given me an answer. And so the responses I've seen from this have been very, very good. But the proof is really in the pudding when you go and see how your data has gone and analyzed against this. I'm actually super proud of how well the team has done to go and address the different jobs to be done over the repository. So we've got different tools that do calls, whether you want someone to summarize something, whether you're looking for a trend pattern, whether you're looking for synthesis. There's just like a bunch of different like jobs to be done within that bucket. And the feedback I've had from customers has been awesome, which is nice. And so it's gone and created this HTML with this headline, the numbers at a glance, what the responses show, some graphs, patterns and where responses differ. It's even got pulled verified quotes from the repository. So it's not ensuring it's not hallucinating. We've got a bunch of anti-hallucination measures, and then some recommendations on the back end. Now, one thing I've learned over the last 5 years building Great Question is every research team is different. I'm sure there are some teams that are exactly the same, but often there's some differences. And so what I say to this particular document is different teams are going to want different branding on this. Do you want it to be totally branded? Do you not? They might not even want an HTML readout. They will just want the plain text, just keep it simple. They might not want to have any numbers on this, right? Or some of these graphs. They might not want to go and make recommendations. But that's the great thing about this is you can now decide how you prompt it and what skills you go and put in place to design things how you want them to be done as your organization, or even maybe giving the power to individuals to decide how they want to do it. And seeing a reply from Addison. It's going to let me read it. Claude MD, we express how you like. Oh, yes. Yeah, totally. Those Claude MD instructions will play very well with the MCP. So which is great for you as an individual, Addison. The challenge is how you make sure that propagates throughout your organization to make sure everyone is using the same thing. Same with skills, right? It's like distribution of skills currently sucks, although I think it's going to get fixed soon. Okay. So back to previous programming, and we're going to land this plane. So the whole idea here is like, how can we use this to go and save us a lot of the manual pain and suffering that comes from doing this? Because each one of these was like its own prompt or like a series like sub prompts. And yeah, Kyle, the HTML readout was created by the MCP. If I wanted to, I use Vercel. I mean, Claude now has the ability to host those things, but I could also use Vercel and grab it and go and share it. And we are working on ways to push that stuff back into Great Question as well, where we can then handle the hosting for you, which is going to be important for things like not only insight reports, it's going to be helpful for when you produce a prototype and you want to test it and you need to host it somewhere, we can host it for you so that we can do the prototype test for you. But yeah, each of these steps used to be like a ton of time. And obviously I took my time here to explain what was going on. Now you can do it so much faster without needing to have to navigate our tool or know what all these things are. It knows what questions to ask you to help you get there, which is not only helpful for you as a researcher or the research ops, it's super helpful for non-researchers who are trying to figure this stuff out. You know, it's like, don't make me think. It uses your credentials and your permissions. So if you are the admin for this account, you're going to be able to do admin type stuff in Claude. But if you're an observer in Great Question or whichever tool you ever use, it uses those same permissions. So an observer is not going to be able to go and launch a study or view particular artifacts that maybe are in a different team or any of those things they wouldn't be able to do in the interface. They can't do it within Claude as well. It's no way to get around that. And the agent can't see it either. That also includes things like PII masking when reading candidate data, GDPR compliance. You know, it isn't a separate system with separate access. Yep, so role-based access carries over, PII masking, GDPR compliance. Yep, I touched on that. Okay, great. What's new? There's a bunch of new stuff coming out over here. Unmoderated prototype testing blocks. So that allows you to do things like prototype tests, website test, card sort, and tree test. So we're just adding more and more methods. Great, reorder them, edit them, point at any saved segment, pull candidates from it. That's super helpful. And then more prototype analytics, you know, completion rates, drop-offs, all that kind of stuff. It's all here. We currently support 7 different languages for study localization. We're looking to add more. PDF export. This is all just new stuff in the last 10 days or something. But it's getting wild. The pace is crazy. And I'll pause there. I've been gabbing a lot. Would love to hear any other questions. Either throw them in the chat, the Q&A. Would love to get a general sentiment of everyone. Did you see anything here that was cool or interesting or different? Did you learn something? Is this something you would like to use? You hate it? Keep it away from me. Let me out. Like, love to get a general read from folks or answer any questions. Okay. Katarina, great demo, very inspiring. Okay. Tatiana, does it work with Visual Studio Code too? I don't 100% know. I want to say yes, but I haven't tested it. let me come back to you on that. I'll follow up on email. Kyle, what sort of eval quality mechanisms are you using to reduce issues? Yes, so we have evals set up that are helping to do a bunch of things. Someone else can talk to this more, it's more technical, but we have evals set up which help us to mean that when we roll out new models, we can test them and decide whether or not they're producing better outputs or not. That's one part of it. Let me stop sharing. I can actually show you a little bit. And we use that for everything. So we're rebuilding our AI moderator product. It's out now in testing, and that's got its own set of evals. We're even working with specific customers to help them eval their AI moderator against their human moderators using their own repository data. So you can even have evals with your own data versus our standard evals. There's more work we can do there. I can probably do a write-up on that and share it with you, Carl. One thing I reference, which is kind of related to that, is just the different ways that the repository does some of this work for you that you're not going to get out of a standard model. Because I think some people look at this and they're like, well, I can just use Claude for my synthesis, or I can just store all my transcripts as markdown files and build my own repository, which I'm like, go for it, go crazy. Like, no skin off my nose for you to go and do that. But this is some work we did a while ago to think about, like, what are all the things that the repository, as one example of our product, needs to be really good at in order to produce a high quality outcome. And based on those things it needs to do, whether it's search and retrieval or theme distillation or providing recommendations or taking action or things like that, is what are then the associated skill that we're going to go and build to go and solve for that. So whether it's a search skill, like just find this thing, summaries, finding trends, taking actions, providing guidance, validating to prevent it from knowing it's hallucinating, metadata tagging skill, and there's a bunch more. This document's a little bit old. Yeah, it's not just the matter of scanning across a bunch of markdown files. If only. Desiree, nice to see everything connected. I'm using Claude and GQ separately. Oh, cool. Lots of copy and pasting. Yeah, this will cut down that manual bridging from one to another. Yeah, big time, big time. Yeah. We see the same thing with our engineers. There are engineers that maybe 6 months ago were using, ChatGPT, and then they'd have their own, coding environment, and they'd be copy and pasting things between. And we're like, well, what are you doing? You can just merge these things in together, and the velocity just like massively shut up. 2 questions about what the MCP can and can't do from Olivia. Can the MCP detect when a scheduled candidate has already reached done, and can it move that candidate to completed and send a thank you email through the MCP? Same for no-shows. Can the MCP see that there's no recording or transcript and automatically move the candidate to no-show status? On the first one, you can do that automatically in Great Question, right? When you schedule a candidate and they finish the interview, you can decide to automatically move that to completed and send a thank you. I think the default right now is you send the thank you and the incentive like 24 hours later, but you could theoretically shorten that. Could you do that with the MCP? Yes, you could totally set up a routine. Maybe it's not immediately, although you could. They've got this new feature in Claude called loops/loop or loops. You could say, look, go and check the MCP every hour or half hour. Look for interviews that have been completed and have a transcript. Yep, you could do that. And send the thank you note. No, but you could, I think you could move it to completed. Let me come back to you on that, Olivia, but I think that's possible. That's interesting because we can't provide the same functionality, but you're making it more fine-grained. That's pretty cool. And then the same for no-shows. I guess it would be the same functionality. I don't know the answer on that. But we do have some stuff that's coming up soon that will allow you to do that within Great Question. But that's all I'm going to say about that. We'll have more coming out on that in the next 6 weeks or something. Last I tried, I had to move the participant to completed so the MCP can pull the transcript. Ah, that's annoying. Oh, yeah. Otherwise, MCP doesn't recognize it as done. I think I can fix that. Let me see if I can fix that for you, because that should, it shouldn't need to be able to have it marked as completed, pull the transcript if the transcript is there. Let me see if I can fix that for you, Fat, and I can probably try and do that today. I'll get back to you. Cool. I'm loving how you're using this, though. That's awesome. Okay. All right, great. Let me get back to you on that. Anyone else? Cool. Any other random questions? Yeah, I feel you, Rob. It's it's definitely a challenge. Once you break the hump of it, though, it feels like you feel like you got superpowers. It is just amazing. So it's definitely worth the price of admission, in my humble opinion. Awesome. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to give everyone their time back. And I'm going to try and end this session now. Wish me luck. Cost, enterprise and individual only plans. Right now, it's on our enterprise plans, which we've got a new commercial plan, which is pretty affordable. Again, in my opinion, we are looking to figure out how we're going to do it on the self-service plans, because we just want everyone to get access to it. It's just a time and prioritization thing. So we've got a bunch of enterprise customers that are taking our time up. So yeah. All right. Thanks, team. Appreciate you all. I'm going to leave the stage now and try and end this. Wish me luck. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.